While early empires in Egypt and Mesopotamia built their monuments on relatively predictable terrain, the people of ancient Bengal built a civilization on top of a geological engine that could redraw the map in a single monsoon. The engine starts hundreds of miles to the north, at the highest point on Earth. Melting snow and intense rainwater run off the high mountains of the Himalayas, gathering momentum as they fall. As this water cuts through the valleys, it creates massive rivers like the Ganges and the Brahmaputra. They carry billions of tons of crushed mountain stone, grinding down the rock into a fine, nutrient-dense powder known as silt. The water eventually hits the flat plains of the coast, loses its velocity, and deposits that silt. Over millennia, this continuous dumping of soil created the Ganges-Brahmaputra Meghna network, the largest geographic delta on the planet. For the humans arriving here, the land offered a stark bargain. To survive, they would have to find a way to harness extreme environmental volatility or risk being completely washed away. This map shows the ancient geographic divisions of Bengal. The earliest human footprints, dating back to roughly 42,000 BCE, appear here on the western fringe, known as the Rod region. Sitting on the edge of a stable plateau, it offered early hunter-gatherers safety from the volatile floodplains to the east. Over thousands of years, those populations migrated eastward, descending directly into the active delta known as Vanga. By 2700 BCE, they were establishing permanent farming villages, like the settlement of Dihar, right in the path of the seasonal floods. They took on the risk of the floods to exploit what the water left behind. The annual inundation coated the land in a thick layer of Himalayan silt, creating an agronomy capable of yielding 2 to 3 full rice harvests in a single year. This diagram illustrates the location of the Gangaridai, an Iron Age kingdom spanning the river confluences. Greek and Roman historians recorded that their massive wealth and massive armies were enough to halt the eastward march of Alexander the Great. That military might was directly underwritten by the delta's caloric surplus. Because the land produced so much food, a vast portion of the population was freed from basic farming to specialize in craft, commerce, and warfare. The rivers that irrigated the crops also provided the infrastructure to move them. In the ancient world, overland transport was slow and heavily restricted by terrain. The interconnected waterways of Bengal functioned as an enormous, ready-made highway system. Controlling this highway meant controlling the region's economy. Monarchs built heavily fortified cities directly on the riverbanks to secure their territory, extract taxes, and protect the flow of regional trade from rival factions. The ancient city of Mahastan, originally known as Pundranagar, stood as a premier inland port. Built on the banks of the Koratoa River, its massive brick foundations remain embedded in the elevated earth today. This sketch highlights the bottom right diagram of Pundranagar. The geometry of the fortification walls follows the exact flow of the river, an engineering design intended to repel armed invasions while simultaneously shielding the urban core from seasonal flooding. By harnessing the flow of the rivers, these isolated farming communities scaled up into highly connected, urbanized centers capable of projecting power across the subcontinent.
The inland routes all ultimately flowed south. The delta acted as a geographic funnel, pouring regional trade directly out into the Bay of Bengal, plugging the local economy into a vast maritime network. Major coastal hubs like the port of Tamralipti and the shipbuilding center at Chittagong emerged to handle this international traffic. They constructed ocean-going vessels capable of carrying goods far beyond the immediate coast. Their most coveted export was muslin. Created from a unique local cotton plant, the fabric was so fine and translucent that it was often referred to as woven air. Its production was a highly specialized industrial secret, and it became an obsession for elites as far away as the Roman Empire. Bengali merchants exported the physical goods of the delta and the cultural institutions of the subcontinent. As they sailed for Southeast Asia, they carried religious texts, artistic traditions, and political structures that became the basis for a regional exchange known as Indianization. Positioned precisely between the overland routes of India, the demanding markets of Rome, and the emerging kingdoms of Asia, Bengal operated as a highly lucrative, unavoidable middleman in ancient global trade. The rivers demanded a heavy toll for this prosperity. During intense monsoon seasons, waterways swelled and earned the title Kirtinasa, the destroyer of monuments. Due to the extreme flatness of the terrain and the massive volume of water, rivers would frequently undergo avulsion. A massive waterway like the Ganges could violently and permanently abandon its channel in the span of a few days, cutting a totally new path across the land. When a river moved, the lifeblood of a city vanished with it. Thriving river ports were instantly turned into useless landlocked ruins, while agricultural settlements directly in the new path were buried under meters of fresh mud and silt. This endless cycle of creation and destruction forced ancient societies to remain mobile. Throughout Bengal's history, ruling dynasties repeatedly abandoned their established capitals and built entirely new administrative centers just to stay aligned with the moving waters. The exact geographic mechanism that guaranteed their wealth could arbitrarily erase their legacy in a matter of weeks. Rather than retreating from this chaotic environment, successive kingdoms chose to engineer it. By the time of the Pala dynasty in the 8th century, rulers were actively reshaping the terrain to secure their economy. This diagram of the Pundranagar hinterland maps out their strategy. The outer rings, labeled 2, 3, and 4, show an extensive network of artificial creeks, canals, and aqua reservation areas designed to manage the water flow across the territory. These state-sponsored projects absorbed the brutal shocks of monsoon floods, safely diverting excess water away from population centers. During the dry season, stored water was released back into rice fields, allowing society to dictate its agricultural calendar. Centuries of living with this constant oscillation between abundance and devastation forged a highly resilient cultural identity. They learned to build, rebuild, and thrive within a landscape that refused to remain still. Ancient Bengal stands as a civilization built through relentless human adaptation, a society that mastered the volatility of the world's most chaotic river delta.